Live Q&A, we have a few things. We're shaking a little bit on the table. 3 questions today. Okay, as always, these come in typically on Instagram, but drop comments down below if you're interested in questions that we'll get to next week. First one, are you better off buying a condo downtown or house in another city? Yeah, great question. I think number one, first and foremost, it really depends on what location you need. For example, if you work downtown, how long it would take you to commute. I think factoring in the commute time is super important, and budget is number 2. So generally the old saying was drive till you qualify. That being said, as things have gone up over the last few years, some of those areas outside the city might not be as cheap as they were in the past in comparison to living downtown Toronto. And basically the example I'll say is a entry-level detached house in the city of Hamilton, for example, a bungalow in a really good area, you're probably looking at somewhere like an entry-level condo here in the city of Toronto, or like a 1-bedroom condo. So it really depends. Obviously, in Hamilton, you'd be getting a house, for example, but in Toronto, it would be more of a condo. But if you don't need all that house space, if you're either maybe a single person, a couple, and a condo is a good place for you to start and keeps you close to where you are downtown, if that's where you're working, something to factor in. The other factor is to consider the cost of transit. So if you're living in a city like Toronto, Barrie, anywhere in Durham, and it's going to cost you for a Go Pass and a TTC pass, whatever that might be. Last I checked, I don't know, it's $400 or $500 a month. I'm not too sure, but if there's 2 of you commuting, that's an extra $1,000 a month. If you were to apply that to a mortgage, would that get you what you're looking for in the city? That's a little bit easier on the commute. I'm not sure. That's a question for you to think about. I just wanted to run that out there. So if you are thinking of maybe moving outside the city, depending on price, of course, it used to be drive to qualify, and the further you get from the downtown core, the cheaper it would be. Now we're seeing prices relatively similar, but you're going to get a bigger product. So if you're looking for a house in Toronto, for example, and let's just say a house that's 1.5 million in Toronto is probably either a semi or a small detached or a row house, depending on location, of course. You're looking at probably a lot of maybe 20 by 80 to 100 is kind of the average for that price, I would say, here in the city. If you're looking at a $1.5 million purchase price in the city of Hamilton or in the city of Burlington, you're probably looking at a 60 or 50 foot lot and a 120 foot deep lot. So definitely a bigger house and maybe a 4 or 5 bedroom and finished basement compared to a 3 bedroom and unfinished basement here in the city. But it's still a house, and if you're okay with the size for location, something to consider. Number 2, newcomers to Canada, can they buy properties? So this year at January 1st of 2023, they implemented a foreign buyers ban, and that does include some of the provisions of those who have landed in Canada. It really depends on status. So if you do have a work permit that has a certain amount of time left on it, that status was changed as we went through the year to allow an exemption for the purchase. That being said, if you don't have a PR or permanent residency, then you would have to pay the foreign buyer tax, to my understanding. I would love to get a little more clarity on that. So if somebody can drop a comment down below on if that's the case, let me know. And then if you do have a PR, then you're able to go and apply for a mortgage just like a Canadian obviously has a permanent residence. So there is a bit of steps, and typically I would say that most people moving to the city for the first time are generally going to rent or lease a property for a year or 2, and that gives a good bearings on maybe where they want to live, just kind of getting accustomed to the city. And then over time, typically we saw a chart last week where generally in year 5 is when half of those who are coming into Canada are looking to purchase, and by year 10 most of those who have came into Canada have purchased a property. So generally there is an element of where those coming to Canada for the first time will rent for the first period of time and then work their way up into buying slowly over a couple years, and generally that might include getting their PR along the way, which would help in, for example, the foreign buyer tax that needs to be paid on purchase. Instead of using it towards a tax, you can use it towards a down payment, for example. Cheapest areas to buy in Toronto. On this one, let's pop up actually popped up a little chart here. Let's see how this looks. This is from Urbanation, really simple to see, and I found it was, I saw the questions before jumping live here. If we're looking at Toronto West, detached, you're looking at about 1.2 million, Central 2 million, and Toronto East 1.1 million. If you look at Halton, and this is where I was saying, where depending on where you're going to, you're going to get a bigger property, but the prices are not necessarily cheaper. Durham is coming in cheaper across the board. If we're looking at a semi-row townhouse, the prices are very similar between Toronto West and East and Halton and Peel. And even actually York is ahead of Toronto West and East. Toronto Central, of course, the most expensive of all, basically. And then if you're looking in the Durham region, definitely the cheapest there if we look at that. And then for condos, this is interesting, is that it's almost even across the board. So if you are looking to purchase a condo, you might not be saving much by going outside of the city of Toronto, especially these days with, and this is as of November 24th, 2023, where a condo downtown, we have 5 or 6 months of inventory, depending on which area you're looking at, which puts us into basically a buyer's market, which is 5 months plus. And then depending on which area of the city, you can get a pretty good condo right now for the same price you would outside the city. And a lot of that is because the stuff outside the city in general, of course, we're generalizing here, is newer build. They're putting in new projects in and around the greater Toronto area. And generally those construction costs are more expensive, which plays a factor there too. So that's your live Q&A. Have any questions, drop them down below. We'll get to them next week, and keep them coming because this is a lot of fun. So hope you enjoy your weekend, and next week we will be into December. Crazy. Here we are. 2024 is coming soon. So have a great day.